Hello and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Josh Lockheed. I'm the training evangelist here at QuoteWerks, and you've arrived here at the feature spotlight for the QuoteWerks Configurator. Appreciate you joining today. We'll be reviewing a number of different concepts today, and based on the polls that I've put out there, it seems like there's a mix of individuals that have worked with the configurator, some that have not, and likewise a good mix of individuals that have both used QuoteWerks Desktop as well as QuoteWerks Web. For those of you that did reply with the fact that you're exclusively using QuoteWerks Web, the beginning of our demonstration is going to be in QuoteWerks Desktop, but if I have time towards the end, I will go on QuoteWerks Web and show the same things. I will say everything that I'm going to be reviewing today is going to be very similar in both platforms, but needless to say, again, if we have time, I will hop into the web platform and show you how things work there. So without further ado, I just want to kick us off here by indicating that we have a questions box in the GoToWebinar meeting. So if you do have any questions throughout the course of the webinar, I welcome you to enter them in there. And if for some reason I'm not able to get to your question, I can always be reached at community@quoteworks.com. Additionally, we will have a recording available within 24 to 48 hours after this webinar. So if you or anyone that you are with and your company wants to review the webinar after it's been done, you're happy to do that. Just go ahead and click on that email and that recording will be there for you. So I think we would be a bit at a miss if we talked about the QuoteWerks configurator without talking about it in the broader context of things. Oftentimes I speak with customers that manage businesses and they say, if my sales reps just remembered to include, or this is a complex configuration and it seems like we always get it wrong. Those are common pain points that I hear. And what we're talking about today is, again, the configurator, which fits very well into this idea of configure, price, and quote. This is a process that generally describes going from the development of a solution to the delivery of that solution in the form of a price quote. So when we talk about configure, we're talking about deciding which products or formats to include and how you're going to price them, the way that you're, how you're going to configure them, how you're going to arrange them, and ultimately how they're going to be manufactured. In some cases, I've actually seen individuals use the configurator to build a quote, and then that quote is actually used as their bill of materials for their manufacturing department. So there's a lot of different ways that you can use the configurator, and we'll talk a little bit about that a little bit later in today's webinar. Second piece of it here, this is really where a lot of pricing decisions come into play, is the price consideration. This is where you're determining how much you're going to cost or charge a customer, and this takes into account a number of different considerations. And then where QuoteWerks is typically falling is under the quote section here. So this is providing the document to the customer with the necessary information, including the solution, prices, terms, conditions, and more. But as you'll see today with the configurator, QuoteWerks is really able to handle all three of these, helping you to configure, price, and quote your solutions in a relatively easy manner. So when we talk about configure, some of the benefits that you'll find if you have a strong configuration tool are going to be faster sales cycles. Configurations also allow you to ensure accuracy of data, reduces the number of errors that you might encounter when running through and building those configurations. Also includes the ability to create workflow rules, and ultimately saves on training costs because you don't have to be specific in terms of what those configurations need to contain. The system's automatically going to prompt you as to what should be included or not. And another great option, and this is actually something that I was talking with a customer about recently, is the increase of sales of accessories. This does help also to increase deal size through upsell and cross-sell. In the past, maybe you forgot to include those cables on that quote. Maybe in the past, you forgot to include the extended warranty. Well, Configurator can help make sure that your sales reps are including those in their quotes. Having a good pricing strategy is also important because it allows you to have a controlled markup and margin. Also helps you to avoid error in the, spreadsheets, and that can occur quite easily if you're working with Excel. If you've ever worked in Excel, you can know one errant change can cause some pretty big issues. Better visibility into price changes if you've got a good strategy here. Control over sales rep discounting. So one of the things that we have in place here at QuoteWerks is document approvals and document workflows. So that's something that would fit into there. Save time and hassle in rolling out price changes. So if you've ever worked with our product data sources, you'll know that it's pretty easy to update pricing within QuoteWerks. And then when it comes to quoting, again, this is really what we're looking to do, is to get to that quote phase and move from a prospect to a customer faster. Also helps with the effective collaboration and responses throughout the quoting process. Strong quoting process also amounts to reduced errors, less time spent on creating quotes and proposals. And that's ultimately things that we're trying to get through the use of a really good CPQ strategy. So when we talk about the QuoteWerks Configurator, again, we're really focusing on that C in CPQ. And what the QuoteWerks Configurator does is it allows you to create configurable products and services. And this automates the pricing of complex products and helps you make sure that the customer's needs are being met at the time of quote creation. It simplifies building quotes by giving sales reps different lists of products that choose from, and you can create logic that will determine how the sales rep will continue through that process depending on what products they choose. And again, to that point, the list of products displayed at each step is going to be based on the previous selection. So an easy way to gain some control over the sales rep's quoting process. And when it comes to the output of the configurator, we're talking about really one of two things. We're talking about either a simple bundle that gets added to the quote, which is simply line items that are added to the quote with no relation to one another, or we're talking about adding in a grouped bundle. And a grouped bundle is added to a quote. All line items are added logically together, and they actually do have a little bit more flexibility when it comes to how you can control them and add them to the quote. So we're actually going to be demoing a configuration that amounts to a grouped bundle, but you can create configurations that create either a simple or a grouped bundle. Now, I wanted to put this here on the screen as we will be looking at this particular part of the configurator in just a few minutes, but I want to just talk about ultimately how the configurator works. What we have here is a basic flowchart for a basic configuration. And you might say, hey, it doesn't look that basic, but when you kind of get into it and you start to understand what everything does, it starts to make a lot of sense. So there's some components here that I want to first define. You'll see our boxes here like TVs, HDTVs, receivers, plasmas, speakers, and accessories. Those are what we call selection containers. And a selection container is basically going to be a representative of a step in your process. Now, that being said, there might be two selection containers for a particular step, again, based on the fact that we may be bringing them to one selection container based on one selection or another selection container based on another selection. In addition to the selection containers, we have what we call branches, and that's what connects the different selection containers together. Navigation-only branches are just going to basically give the ability to go to one branch or another. So if we were in the TVs container and we wanted a navigation-only branch, it might be, let's say, branch to HDTVs, which will contain a list of only HDTVs, or a branch to plasma TVs that will include all plasma TVs. The other options that we have are default branches, which will bring you to the next step regardless of what you choose. And then if you see over here between plasmas and accessories, there's actually a part number there, and that's what we call a part number branch. And that will bring you to a specific selection container based on the specific part number that you choose. And we're actually going to show you how to set up one of those a little bit later as well. So again, I just wanted to give you an idea of how things are organized, the names for things, and again, we'll be digging into this flow chart in a little bit. So what does this flow chart amount to? Well, when it gets into the system and you start to run a configuration, it's going to run you through different steps, and it's going to ultimately bring you to step one, and you're able to define a number of different things in step one. So on the bottom left-hand corner, you'll see our configuration prompt, and it says, please select the type of TV you want in your entertainment system, and users would make their selection and would bring them to the next step in the process. And you'll see here, we've got some different delimiters here. So for example, in step two, we can select at least one or need to select at least one, but can select no more than one. Again, we'd make our selections and then move on to the next step. We'd make our selections here in the case of receiver, or in case of our accessories, and we move on to the next step. Now, each of these steps has a predefined list of products to choose from, and the predefined list of products that they're choosing from is based on their previous selection. Now, this particular configuration, I think, is a 7-step configuration, but you can get the sense or the idea that what we're doing here, again, is moving through that flow chart and making our way to a situation where we're able to actually insert these products into the quote, just like we would on the last step here. So I'm actually going to show how this works live in the system now, and I'm also going to get a little bit into how to build a configuration through means of editing an existing configuration. Now again, while I pull up my QuoteWerks here, I would just welcome anyone, if you have any questions, again, feel free to put them in the questions box. So here I've got a standard quote put together. I've got a sold to, ship to contact. I've got some products in there already, but we're working through a configuration and we want to add a configuration to our document. In this case, we're going to focus on an entertainment system because that's what comes preloaded into the QuoteWerks system, but this could really be anything. It could be, I saw a fencing company using the configurator. I've seen a number of IT companies use the configurator, manufacturers, really a number of different reasons why you might use the configurator. And the best way for us to work with the configurator is just by clicking on that configurator icon in the top middle of the screen. So this is the configurations window, and you can show all or filter and try and drill down into the configurations. Obviously, I've only got a couple here, but there is a potential that you'd have many, and this gives you the ability to ultimately work through and find which one that you're looking for. Alexander had a question here, can the configurator work with Quote Valet? And Alexander, yes, it can. So what we're doing here is we're working to get products into the quote, right? So the configurator is going to build us that list of products. It's going to insert them into the quote. And once they're inserted into the quote, we can do whatever we want with that. And part of that would be being able to deliver the quote itself via Quote Valet. So that is definitely an option there. So as I mentioned, you have the ability to search through and filter down and find the configuration you want. The one that we're going to be working with today is the one called Demo Configuration. And like I said, I want to actually go through the process of building a configuration, and then we'll ease into how you might edit that configuration and potentially adjust it a little bit as well. So I'm going to hit Start, and this actually starts the configuration process. Now this is actually very similar to the one that we saw before, and all the examples that we're showing today are entertainment systems. But you'll see here in step 1, what we have are certain controls. First is the ability of selections that can or cannot be made. So here we have to select at least one option, but in this case can't select more than 99. And at the bottom here, this is the config prompt that I was referring to. This is saying, please select a TV. So we can either double click on the product or click on it and hit add, and it's going to add it to our list of part numbers. When we're done adding, and in this case, we can only add one, so it's not actually going to allow us to add more. Actually, it is, I'm sorry. We have to select one, but no more than 99. So we've made our selections. I'm only going to select one here, and we're going to hit next step. Now in this instance, we don't need to make a selection because select least is set to 0, but we can't select more than 10. I'm going to go ahead and select one of these receivers and move on to the next step. And this is really a simple configuration, a little bit simpler than the one that I showed you on the slide there, in that there's only 3 steps. And this is where we would select our speakers. So I'm just going to add a couple options there. Next step brings us to the final step. And once we've come to the final step, we can insert this into a section header, a heading, or we can add it to the quote or insert it into the quote. And adding it to the quote is going to put it at the bottom of the current list of products. And I'm going to go ahead and do that. And then once you've hit add or insert, it's going to ask you how many of this configuration would you like to add to the quote. I'm going to leave the quantity as 1 and hit OK. And you'll see that very quickly we were able to insert what could ultimately be a pretty complex list of products into our quote in a very short amount of time. And one of the things that you'll note here as well is that Our entertainment system has our demo sys manufacturer part number. It has our description here, and it has all the pricing as well. And you'll also notice that the summary line, which is the line here, also has a subtotal as well. So it's going to show the subtotal in the summary line as well. And what I'll do is I'll actually just show you quickly what that would look like if we were to print it. And to your point, Alexander, this is where, if we wanted, we could go through the process of actually delivering the quote via Quote Valet. All right, so Paul asked a question, which is, how do I get the section header to show up on the quote layout? Now, there's a number of ways I could address that question. I guess, are you talking about the section header being this line here, the summary line? If that's the case, it'll actually print by default. If you're referring to our layouts as they exist here, it really depends on which layout you're using. So I'm not sure I can get you an answer to that question without having some more information. But if you want to email me, again, community@quoteworks.com, I can definitely handle that question for you. But again, here we're just really taking a look at what an example of the configurator would look like in our printed output. And you can see here, it's listed out, and we have a summary line as well, which totals up all of the different products underneath it. Now, to your point there, Paul, if you did add a section header like this, you could see this particular one is not formatted. You could use certain formulas within the layout designer to make sure that this is a different color or bolded or something else. All right. Now, what I also wanted to show you here is how we could edit a configuration. So we're going to go back into our configuration window. And we're going to go back in the demo configuration. And instead of running through this configuration now, what we're going to do is we're going to hit edit. And this shows you a little bit of how you might actually set up a configuration. So we've got our configuration name. We've got our part number, which would be the part number that's used in that summary line. The group configuration is what we're doing now, but again, you could do a simple configuration. You're going to have a lot less options to choose from here. In addition to being able to set the part number, or what we would refer to as the manufacturer part number here, you can also add a vendor part number. You can set an item type. A configuration description is what it's going to be listed as here in the configurator. And you can also attach a picture, set a unit price override, and also assign group properties. So if you wanted to apply a discount modifier across all products in that group, you could do that. Or let's say that particular configuration was for a item that you're billing on a recurring basis. You could also convert the group to recurring as well, which means that you could show it as billing on a monthly, yearly, quarterly basis. Now, the other tab that's really important when it comes to configurations is the flowchart tab, which I showed you an example of before. And this one is actually much simpler than the one that we looked at, but we're going to make it a little bit more complicated, a little bit more in-depth and specific to our needs here. So as I mentioned, each of these are called a selection container, and then we have our branches that connect them. What I want to do is I want to create selection containers that are going to bring our customer, or our sales reps, excuse me, to a different container based on the type of TV they select. And there's two different types of TVs that we have. So I'm going to create a selection container for each of them. So I just right-clicked and I'm hitting create new selection container. And we're going to put HDTV accessories. And then we'll do one for our plasma TVs. There we go. So one of the things that we'd have to do here is to figure out what do we want the sales rep to be able to select from when they are navigating into one of these two containers. So what we would do is we would double click on the container, and it's going to bring up our edit selection container option where we can set how many need to be selected. In this case, we'll say that we need at least one and no more than one to be selected for our HD accessories. And then we can click into items, and this is where we actually add in the items that we want to have on that list. So I'll click add item, and I'm just going to add in kind of a random product here. I'm not really concerned with what it is. I just want to show you how this all works. But you'll see we're adding it into the list, and you can also edit the line type or line attributes when you're adding it in here. One thing I do want to point out is the sort order. So although we only have one on our list right now, just know that as you add items in, if you want them to show higher up on the list, you give them a lower value. So the lower value they have, the higher up on the selection list they're going to show. And that's just an important consideration to make. So I've added my one product there. I'm going to hit OK. I'm going to go over to my plasma TV accessories and do the same thing. And again, I'm just going to add in an accessory in here. Not too worried about what it is. Clearly, if you were doing your own configuration, you would be concerned with what they are and want to be very logical as to what you're including in each of these steps. All right, so we now know that we have our HDTV accessories in our HDTV accessories container. We have our plasma TV accessories in our plasma TV container. What we want to do now is build the logic that would bring a user from our TVs container to our other container. And the way that we would do that is by doing what we call part number branching. So we have our products ending in 7.1 and 4.1 are both HD TVs. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a branch that goes from the TV selection to the HD TVs by using my right click. And for this instance, we are going to be utilizing our part number based branching. So what we're doing is we're saying if this part number gets selected, bring that user to the HDTV accessories, right? And because we have two HDTVs listed, we would just do that twice. And then for our plasma TVs, we'd have to do the same, except this time we're going to choose the part numbers for our plasma TVs. Okay, so now what we've got here is the user is going to be brought to the TV's container. They're going to select one of the four options. If they select one of the HDTV options, they're going to be brought here. If they select one of the plasma options, they're going to be brought here. And then we need to terminate this, right? So regardless of what accessories they choose, I want them to always end up in the receiver's container. So I'm going to drag this over, and I'm going to utilize what we call a default branch. And a default branch is just going to bring our users there regardless of what they choose. And we're going to do that for both of them. So you can see how really quickly we've brought and added an additional layer to this configuration. I'm going to hit OK here. And what we can do now is take a look at how this differs from what we ran through previously. It's not going to differ much, but there's going to be that one significant change. And that's in this first step here. So if we choose our 53-inch HD compatible TV and hit next step, you're going to see that we are presented with our structure wiring series 300 option. If we go back to the previous step, and instead of including one of our HD TVs, we include a plasma, that next step is going to bring us to our 2-channel amp. So you can see how very easily we've created a branch that allows you to select only specific set of items based on your selection criteria. Then we would just go through our normal process. Both of those are going to bring us back to our receivers, which is going to bring us to our speakers. And we are done with our configuration. It's been inserted into the quote. All right, so that is a very high-level overview of how you would use the configurator. All right, so Arthur asked what happens when you select one of each TV type. Now, that's where we've got some logic in place here, right? So there was that option that we had, which is select. I'll show you here just a moment. So in each step, we have the ability to do a min selection and a max selection. The min selection is how we're going to want to set how many they can, but in situations where you want to have them go based on a specific part number, you're going to want to choose to make the max selections allowed 1 so that that logic doesn't get broken. So it's a good question, Arthur. You want to try and control that from happening by just allowing a singular selection. All right. All right, so we have a question here from Alexander. He has a seeding company. I love that, Alexander. I'm actually a huge gardener, although I'm sure you're at a much larger scale. And he has 7 different requirements with different options. One of the things that he has to determine is area to be seeded. Now, I'm sure that you could put in something there that would indicate a certain range, so create a product in our product catalog that would represent a certain range of areas. So let's say 4 by 10, 10 by 10, 20 by 20 would have different prices associated with them, and you could add those. And then everything after that, Alexander, like the ground preparation where you have 3 options, seed selection where you have 5 options, not a problem at all. You would just create each of those options as product options within the product catalog, and that's where we're pulling those items in for the configurators to the product catalog. So as long as they exist in the product catalog, you can certainly create a configuration off of them. So good question there. Alexander, if you need any more on that, definitely talk to the tech support team. I'm sure they'd be happy to help you figure out exactly how that works. And they may have worked with maybe not a seeding company, but a company that does things kind of similar to what you're doing. I now did say, and I do want to keep this webinar as close to 30 minutes as possible, but I did say that I was going to bring us over to QuoteWerks Web and just generally show how the configurator looks in QuoteWerks Web. So I'm going to do that. While I do, if anyone has any additional questions, I did just get another question here. There's a question about just reviewing the product catalog. So bear with me for one moment while I do that, and then we'll get back to the web. If you come to the configurator, the product catalog is called upon while you're in the item selection. So here we're going to go ahead and edit, go to the flow chart, and let's say we want to adjust HDTV accessories. We're going to double click on it. In the items tab, this is where when you hit add item, it's going to bring up your product catalog or your items list, right? And this is where you're going to be able to pull products from really any of the different connected product databases that you have. So as long as, Alexander, you have your certain ranges of sizes of seeding acres, you have your different selections for the different types of items that you need in your configurator, you just create an entry for each of those in here, and then you would add them as items in here so that your sales reps could go through and select off of this list. That same list, by the way, just for those of you that might not know, is the same list that you can find if you go and you hit products as well. It's just a product lookup window. All right, so let me get back over to QuoteWerks Web. Again, I'm not going to get too in depth here in QuoteWerks Web, but to show you that the configurator does exist, and you also have all of the same options that you have. You select a configuration, you can run through it, you can edit, clone, create new ones, delete ones, and then again, if we just start this configuration, you'll see everything is really the same, right? It's just a little bit different in terms of the way that it's set up. And you'll see actually that my changes that I just made on desktop persisted, in that I selected my HDTV TV, and it brought me over to my structured wiring package here. So very quickly, if you're making changes in desktop, do they get brought over into the web here as well. So just making my selections as we did before. Again, exactly the same. And then once we're done, it just adds them here into the document. Now, the configurator itself, we could likely spend a lot more time discussing it. You likely need to spend a lot more time configuring it if you want it to be useful, because each of the configuration steps are going to be really important and need to be accurate for your sales reps to be able to make accurate decisions. So that being said, we do have a number of other resources available. I would welcome anyone here to review our help files. I have some help files out there that talk specifically about the layout designer, the configurator, and how to use it. I also have some QuoteWerks videos as well. Those are on the website on the videos page. We also have the QuoteWerks forum if you want to talk to other individuals that utilize QuoteWerks. And I do have these webinars happening really on a bi-weekly basis. So feel free to sign up and join any of the webinars that you think make sense. We also have a tips and tricks email that goes out on a monthly basis, and would definitely be interested in having someone or have you sign up for those emails as we highlight different features in each of those. And then, as I mentioned, please feel free to email me at community@quoteworks.com. Before I do, there was just one question of what's the benefit of the configurator over bundles? Well, bundles are pre-configured lists of products that are static. So when you're entering a bundle into a quote, you're really just going through and choosing from a pick list of existing lists, right? So, for example, if I come in and add a bundle, I'm adding my desktop bundle here. I'm hitting two buttons, and really the configuration's already been completed. Me creating this bundle was me configuring a pre-configured list of items. The configurator is much more step-by-step and gives a lot more granularity to the changes that can be made to the list. So two completely separate things, although they are tied together in that configurations do create bundles. So I hope that answers your question there, Alexander. As I mentioned, I wanted to keep this as close to half hour as possible. We're at 32, so I'm going to call it here today. I really do appreciate everyone's time. If you have any questions that we weren't able to answer, please do send them over to me at community@quoteworks.com, or as always, reach out to the tech support or sales team as needed. So thanks again for your time, and I hope everyone has a great rest of the day.